Hi there, I'm Johnny Lieberman and welcome to this MotorTrend comparison test coming at you from sunny Southern California. We're up here on the trail behind me, the blue vehicle. That is the all-new 6th generation Toyota 4Runner. But I brought along a friend, Jared, and he brought along...
Got a brand new 2025 Jeep Wrangler 4xe. That's a hybrid Jeep dressed in none other than the olive drab Willys 1941 trim.
And that's right, the Jeep can trace its heritage back to World War II. But here's the thing, 4Runners have been around for a long time too. Over 4 decades of the Toyota 4Runner. So they both have a ton of heritage.
And Jeep is leaning into that heritage. Like, look on the hood, it says 41 right there. And Jeep is celebrating how much hasn't changed since the days when this was a flat fender.
You know, when the 4Runner started out, like the Jeep, it had solid axles. It was basically a pickup truck with a shell. It had leaf springs. They've modified it. They've kind of leaned more into the on-road thing. However, this is one of the 9 new trim. And look, to get up here, you gotta have some off-road chops. So I think the question becomes, do you absolutely need the full hardcore, going to Moab, rock crawling, King of the Hammers capability that you get with the Wrangler? Or are you willing to sacrifice some of that for more comfort, fuel economy, a larger screen, price?
I know you could go on. Let's go find out and get dirty. We're driving on a moderately bumpy road, couple rocks, couple potholes.
Yep, just hit my head on the roll bar here.
Yep. And this is the off-roading that most people are gonna do, I'd say.
Right. And look, it's wet, it's muddy, there's some ruts, there's some rocks and boulders and other obstacles. So like, you couldn't do this. It helps to have all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. Oh, what's a blind spot alert, how unavailable? Sensor blocks, okay.
It's a muddy road, of course the sensors have mud on them.
So, you do need some off-road capability to do this trail. It's not, it's an easy trail.
Yeah, I'd say high clearance, four-wheel drive. That's a must-haves for this trail.
And these tires are quite good. I was surprised when I looked at the tires and I said, oh, these are not Goodyear Wranglers. These are BFG KO2s.
Yeah, you see KO2 on a tire, that's confidence inspiring.
Right, and so that's, if people who don't know, KO2 is pretty much the best rock crawling tire, but you do compromise like on-road ride quality, fuel economy, stuff like that.
Well, let's go even further. That is, yeah, KO2 that's all around. You've got a 3-peak mount snowflake, get you through the snow. It'll do the rocks, it'll do the dirt, it'll do the sand, and it won't drone your ears off on the pavement. So I'll call it the gold standard for doing everything.
Compare it real fast to a Toyo Open Country 3, which is also a 3-peak snowflake. And
Johnny, they are neck and neck. At that point, it comes down to which one do you think looks better? I think they both look pretty sweet. Look, back to the speed we're driving down this road. This is key. We're doing
8, 9, 10.
Not even 10.
Yeah.
And this comes down to things that are inherent to the Jeep Wrangler and not many other. I'm gonna say tell me another SUV that has a solid axle in the front,
Power wagon,
truck, not SUV.
Yeah.
Tell me another SUV. There isn't one.
I mean, there was the G-Wagon, and the G-Wagon went ahead and switched to independent front, so yeah.
This is where I sit on this really painful fence because I
want to smash your head as you're saying that. Go ahead.
You're going to, and the Jeep will. This is the Wrangler Willys edition. And this is, I'll say it again, leaning into what hasn't changed since the World War II days. So it still has those solid axles, and they're not great for this road, period. That's it. Solid axles, coil springs are not great for this trail.
Yeah, and they're also, as we found out yesterday, like they're not really great for the freeway, and they're not really great for the back roads, they're not really great for the city. So where are 2 solid axles? Where are they great? Why are we experiencing so much discomfort? What do they net you?
Johnny, they're really good at one thing.
What one thing is that?
The one weird trick that independent front suspension doesn't want you to know.
Yeah.
Solid axles have unparalleled capability and reliability in the rock crawling
boulders.
Yeah. So you can build Jeep Wranglers to disconnect the front sway bar.
Yep.
The axles can articulate like none other. And they're serviceable, they're repairable, and they're just giant tubes of metal. You can There are fewer parts to service, fewer parts to break.
But even forget about servicing for a second. Like there is a technical advantage because as one wheel goes up, the other one is forced down.
Yes.
So when you're rock crawling and you got a wheel hanging in the air, it kind of guarantees you'll have purchase on the other side.
Yes.
And that's right. That's the real advantage.
Well, and you can argue deeper. You have CV joints versus U joints at the end, but those are minutia.
Yeah, yeah.
One other key point with the solid axles, your ground clearance, that is a static number. That doesn't change. Other vehicles with independent front suspension, if you compress that suspension, your belly gets closer to the ground. But I mean, we're splitting hairs here.
No, but on rocks, that's important because rocks, unlike mud, actually like damage big metal components, right? So this is something you gotta think about and consider.
But still, every time I try and think, my head hits the window.
Yeah.
Because of these solid axles. This is the thesis statement of the Wrangler.
Yeah.
Wrangler celebrates what hasn't changed.
Right, and look, I'll even go further. I'll say what I like about Jeeps when you're not rock crawling, let's say, is that you can, and I've done it many times, rip the doors off, put the roof down, and it's really fun. It's just like, so there is that. We could really get into the compromises of this vehicle. One thing I'll point out is, even though the track is pretty wide, the interior is quite tight. It's quite narrow. A lot of noise, the top flaps in the wind, crazy highway noise.
Although with the new update, they do tell you that they've added a lot of speakers and a lot of tech to make a windows down, top up phone call a lot more clear.
All right, so let's talk about the 4xe angle. What's your take on this?
For a hardcore Jeep enthusiast, you hear hybrid Jeep and you just immediately go limp. Like, oh, okay, maybe I don't like that.
Yeah.
Now, and that's natural until you drive the thing. Something I would encourage everyone to try is hop in a 4xe, which is a plug-in hybrid Wrangler.
Yep.
So it's not just hybrid, you can actually plug this into your wall and get yourself 22 miles of 100% electric range.
Yeah, like right now, we're doing this trail, the engine's off.
Yeah, part of the reason why it's so quiet is not because, the soft top is over us, the windows are up. But yeah, Johnny is draining the battery right now, climbing up a hill. And if we quiet down, all we hear are the tires crunching over the sand and the rocks. We're driving an electric Jeep right now. I like it for a few reasons, and I do have criticisms, but there's the absolutely silent driving on the trail. Because yes, I love to wheel big block things with 54-inch tires. That's an amazing experience. I get it. Yep. This is just another experience. It's just a different way to do the same thing. I'm not saying one's better, but this just lets you do it. So there's the quiet drive, and then you look at the numbers. Torque output of that electric motor and the 2-liter turbo engine, 470 foot-pounds of torque.
Oh, I was gonna say 469. Okay, 470, yeah.
That's the exact same as that Wrangler 392.
Yes, which can wake the dead.
Yeah. Now this you can
on startup,
and you can get all of that torque, and
right.
It's almost silent. So
yeah, this thing is real quick. When we were testing yesterday on the back roads, it was real quick. My thing is, I'll give you my take on it as somewhat of an EV enthusiast. It needs more battery. So 22 miles is just pathetic. It's sort of corporate greenwashing for Jeep. And also, I kind of hate plug-in hybrids. It's like pick a lane. And what I mean by that is like, you have a great EV that only goes 22 miles, and then this rather coarse, pathetic 2-liter engine kicks on, and it's just kind of thrashy. And so it's like, either give me the V8 or give me a full electric Wrangler, which I think would be awesome. I think it is coming. And I just worry that like no one plugs them in. Because if you don't bother to plug it in, then you're lugging around a big battery that's empty.
Yeah, and batteries are heavy. This is not a light vehicle.
Yeah, they're heavy, and then you got to charge it. So now you're using a 2-liter to make the little tiny 4-cylinder to make the Jeep go forward and charge a battery. So it's just really inefficient. And I was looking right now, 14.3 miles per gallon average, and the engine's not even on. Like it's not that efficient. So more battery, I would say. But again, and you're right, like ultimate capability wise, obviously this is going to be more than the 4Runner. However, you went on a good obstacle earlier. I wouldn't say like, the most impressive obstacle. This couldn't do it. And this particular one, which is $69,000, Doesn't have a front locker, and I think that would have helped you out. Now, true, we didn't air down the tires, and you didn't really back up and try a different angle, but still, you know, the most capable off-roader you can buy, or up there amongst the most capable, should have made that no problem. So
I will still cite it might have needed a driver mod there. It was raining and people were watching me, and I backed down before.
hey man, I'm just saying, like, it has good capability, but even a mighty Jeep.
Hey, how about that? Take your 4Runner with the air dam up that same obstacle, Johnny.
Oh, I chose not to. I think the elephant in the room here is, like, these are not the perfect vehicles to compare against each other. And what I mean by that is, boy, it would have been fun to have the TRD Pro. However, it's early February 2025. For some reason, they're not going to have vehicles in the fleet till May. So they said, hey, you could have this one, which we thought was going to be the hybrid powertrain. It showed up and it wasn't, and we ordered a Jeep 4xe. So we got a big price gap. This one sits at $56,000, which is kind of like smack in the middle of the 4Runner lineup. That Jeep, the way it sits, it's like basically 70. It's like $69,000.
Starts in the mid-50s.
That said, the Willys only has a rear locker and does not have a front sway bar disconnect like you can get on the Rubicon. The TRD only has a rear locker, does not have a sway bar disconnect like you can get on the TRD Pro. Now, the Rubicon has a front locker. I'd say stupidly, or just a big oversight, Toyota didn't put a front locker in the TRD Pro.
I will second that. That is
Yeah.
a massive oversight.
Yeah, they should have done that. But I will say from the passenger seat, Toyota is much happier on this trail than the Jeep was. And I'm much happier inside the vehicle.
Oh, I'm much happier driving this. We're going, and we just hopped out of the Jeep Wrangler, and we were doing 7, 8, 9 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And it's bouncing you around. And now we can do, now it sounds like shades of difference, but 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. And
But it's not making me do this. I can.
yeah, and you know, look, there's no roll bar to hit your head on. You know what I'm saying? It does really well on a muddy, ruddy, watery trail.
And I will go out on this very muddy limb and say, this is the kind of off-roading that a lot of people will do.
Yeah,
Driving on a bumpy road at this speed.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are going to buy a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 car, SUV or truck, and go rock crawling.
What are your thoughts from behind the wheel? We're in dirt mode. I mean, we're going downhill, but
Well, I've got to bring this back to just the fundamental basics of what makes the 4Runner so much different than the Wrangler.
yeah,
Actually, ever since that dichotomy where it switched from solid,
a little more on-road focus.
yeah. So when 4Runner lost its solid front axle and switched to an independent front suspension, game totally changed. Independent front suspension is really good at exactly what we're doing.
Right.
And that's just keeping the ride smooth while maintaining speed on a bumpy road.
Isolating the passengers from what the suspension's doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now a drawback, if we were to go take the 4Runner on a crazy rock crawling trail, not as much capability there.
Right.
But we will keep beating this argument. This is the off-roading that most people are going to do. This right here.
Yeah, and again, I will also say, like, there is, you know, a lot more room here. The screen is much bigger. The tech, I can actually say Jeep, what do they call it? Uconnect Plus version 5 or whatever is in the Jeep. Like, the screens are better. You get more useful information. The Toyota has a bigger screen, and you know, most people just use CarPlay anyway, so you can, you know, you have a bigger map to work from. It's more useful in that way. I like the giant oversized knobs in the Jeep. They're kind of hysterical that you need a knob that big. I know, oh, if you're wearing work gloves, you ain't wearing work gloves in your 4Runner, bro. But it's just cool, you know. It kind of goes in this like big toy aesthetic that this thing has.
I will take the knobs over a touchscreen for the important stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I think they did a nice job on this vehicle, and it's funny. Both you and I were not really exactly fans of the new Tacoma, and this is built on the same platform as the Tacoma, but shortening the wheelbase, one more year of engineering, and I really think that's critical, and it's hard to explain. But you know, all the stuff the engineers didn't get to do on the Tacoma, they're like, let's fix it. And I think they've just made a more mature, just, I don't know, more pleasant, more sophisticated, better handling vehicle than the Tacoma, right?
Mm-hmm. And if you drive both of these things back to back, you can start to suss out those differences.
Yeah. So, you know, even though it's not the hybrid, like the horsepower is pretty good. It's 278 horsepower, 2.4 liter turbo, 317 pound-feet of torque, which is, you know, torquey. So the thing moves fine. We had no problem going up this trail. So I just think for most people, the 4Runner is going to be the more sensible, the more logical, the more, oh, I could justify purchasing this SUV over the Wrangler. Like if you had one, I'm just trying to think like your day-to-day routine.
It's a lot of sacrifices. You are making numerous sacrifices for the Wrangler. We justify those sacrifices with, but I can take the doors off. I can take the
doors off.
It's a Jeep.
Yeah.
Like those 4 letters, like, oh, but it makes everything okay. And for some people, it totally does.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Totally does.
It's an interesting point.
We didn't talk about this on the Wrangler, but we mentioned it, the steering. You steer the Wrangler on the highway, and you just feel that disconnect between where the wheel is and where the car is going.
It's a 2 hands on the wheel at high speeds type situation, and you know, it's like, yeah, it's got radar cruise control, but it definitely doesn't have hands-free cruise control, you know.
And that comes down to the truck steering. It's got an actual steering box with a pitman arm and linkages. It's not a rack and pinion. It's a completely different mechanism.
Right. Yeah. Back to this 4Runner though, I was taking a good look at it, and it does have that big air dam up front, which obviously is just for miles per gallon. And you know, I think they say this thing does like 21 city, 25 highway, and I know for the hybrid it doesn't really change that much. It's like 23, 24 or something like that, so a little bit better around town. About twice as good as the Jeep. But that really does look like it would limit capability, because this thing, you know, if you were to remove that, you'd have actually a pretty good approach angle. These are decent tires. They're Falcon Wild Peaks, you know, they're pretty good. You think if you own this, would you just remove that?
I would, and if you talk to a Toyota engineer or PR person, they will say, here are the 9 fasteners that release that air dam, because we just put it on there for the EPA and that's it.
And would you know what it adds in terms of MPG? Because usually those add like a mile per gallon.
Oh, it is next to negligible, but when you do the math,
every little bit counts.
But that's the only reason. It's not for aesthetics. And we're coming up to a rock right now, and it's about the size of a small pumpkin, and we might hear this. We might hear it scrape. Shh.
Yep.
It just tickled it. It just tickled it.
Yeah,
That's it.
And it's like it's a formable piece of rubber, basically.
But still, that's a thing that's touching obstacles on the trail.
Yeah.
And if you look in that same place on a Wrangler, that's a metal skid plate.
Yeah, and TRD Pro, to be fair, and a Trail Hunter, to be fair. You know, and again, interestingly, both those models are hybrid only. So, you know, you get the MPG without the aero, just based on the, you know, the hybrid powertrains.
And the torque and so much.
The torque is cool. The 465 pound-feet is cool. I was kind of shocked Toyota didn't give us that one.
Well, the trucks are dirty, Johnny. What did we learn?
Jared, we learned quite a bit. I think the first thing we learned was this looks just like a Rubicon, but it ain't a Rubicon, and it costs as much as a Rubicon. And I think for that money, you know, not having the front locker, not having the disconnecting sway bar, as you proved, you're gonna get stuck in a couple spots because again, you think you're in the full fat Wrangler and you're not.
Do you think if we had the ability to disconnect that sway bar and lock that front end, we could have gotten through those couple sticky spots?
The first one for sure, yeah.
I think we could have. I definitely think we could have.
The other thing we learned is that despite our misgivings about this air dam and this not being the TRD Pro, Toyota has built a very capable off-roader, like surprisingly so.
Yeah, when you get in this thing and you pair a perfect line choice, amazing spotter, and an expertly tuned traction control system, you can really unlock a surprising amount of capability.
Yeah, it didn't get stuck anywhere. It went everywhere we wanted it to go. And the air dam survived. Funny story. I took some pictures of you wheeling this thing and I stuck them on Instagram, and a guy commented and said, hey, I'm a Toyota engineer and I helped develop that air dam, which they call a spoiler. Absolutely take it off. It's just for getting MPGs on the highway. If you go off-road, take it off. However, look, it survived relatively unscathed. And so I think if you take those two things into consideration, plus the fact that we weren't bashing our heads the entire time on this trail getting up here in the Toyota, The winner of this MotorTrend comparison test is the 2025 Toyota 4Runner TRD Off-Road Premium. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, share, do all those things. Floss, eat your veggies, wake up early, do some push-ups, all that, and we'll catch you next time. However, I'm not satisfied.
Oh, I think we should have a more even battle. Perhaps hybrid versus hybrid.
I think what we got to do is get the $70,000 TRD Pro versus a $70,000 Wrangler Rubicon and see what's what. Do a real ultimate off-road test.